Mr. President, I ask that further proceedings under the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Mr. President, over the past 6 months, I have come to the floor several times to discuss the findings of an ongoing investigation by the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee into the for-profit education companies and the growing role they play in higher education. This investigation has been now ongoing for over a year. Today, I would like to focus my remarks on our men and women in uniform and how the for-profit schools are focusing on recruiting them to their schools and what this means for the taxpayers of America. Mr. President, the first GI Bill made it possible for millions of service members returning from World War II to go to college and get ahead in life. In the process, that legislation helped usher in a new era of American prosperity. That GI Bill continued, of course, through Korea, the Cold War, and through Vietnam. I myself used the GI Bill after my service time so that I could go to law school. Over the decades, we've built on that success by extending federal financial aid to active duty members of our armed forces and indeed to all Americans who seek to build a better life through higher education. On the whole, this has proved to be one of the federal government's smartest investments, an investment in human capital that has produced huge dividends for our nation. We in Congress have been eager to ensure that this new generation of veterans returning from Iraq and Afghanistan, those who sacrificed so much for our country, are getting the education benefits they earned and the quality of education they deserve. Led by Senator Webb and others, we have enacted new laws and expanded existing programs to provide generous new educational benefits to veterans, to active duty service members, and to their families. This is an historic achievement, and I am sure that all of us were proud to support this. Implemented in August of 2009, the post-9/11 GI Bill provides that veterans who served 90 days or more on active duty after September the 10th of 2001 are eligible for up to 36 months of educational benefits. And for the first time ever in history, veterans can transfer these benefits to a spouse or to a child. And over the last decade, the Department of Defense has also expanded aid available to active duty soldiers, sailors, and airmen through its Tuition Assistance Program. This program will pay up to a maximum of $4,500 a year towards a service member's classes. Also, in 2009, Congress created the Military Spouse Career Advancement Accounts designed to expand employment and portable career opportunities for active duty spouses that provides for a grant of $4,000 over a 3-year period of time. So when the Congress acted to give new and better benefits to veterans and active duty members and their families, we fully expected that for-profit schools might have an important role to play in providing higher education. Obviously, they are flexible, and some of the pioneering work done were ideally suited to active duty soldiers and to veterans juggling college with work and family obligations. During my time in the military, of course, we had the University of Maryland that still obviously provides a lot of online work. In that time, it was called distance learning. You did it by mail. And the University of Maryland provided a lot of educational benefits for many years to active duty personnel serving in far-flung places around the world. Now, of course, that was not a for-profit school. That was a non-profit school. Now, unfortunately, when we enacted this whole new benefits package for service members and veterans and their families, we did not anticipate what would happen by opening up a new stream of funding to the for-profit schools. We didn't foresee that the for-profit sector, eager to please Wall Street investors, would go after this new funding aggressively in ways not in the best interest of veterans and service members. We didn't recognize that by allowing service members to combine transfer, and borrow against these various federal benefit packages, we were giving for-profit schools an opening to enroll service members, veterans, and family members in very expensive educational programs. My committee's investigation over the past year has revealed an industry dominated by the very same Wall Street companies and equity investors who brought about the subprime mortgage crisis. These investors are focused on rapid growth, quick profits. In relatively short order, for-profit colleges and universities have succeeded in enrolling 10% of the students and claiming fully 25% of the federal financial aid budget, including $7 billion a year in Pell Grants. So the for-profit sector in higher education has 10% of all of the students in the country in higher ed. They get 25% of all federal financial aid. Many of these companies generate big profits, and there is a big problem. The committee has compiled data for 30 companies that own the for-profit schools, including the 15 largest publicly traded ones, showing that more than half the students that these institutions enroll drop out within the first year. 2/3 of the students who are there for a 2-year program drop out in the first year. And some of the worst performing institutions have been the most aggressive to enroll service members and veterans. Because profitability in the for-profit education industry is driven by enrollment growth, my committee investigation has focused largely on the extraordinarily aggressive marketing and recruitment practices at these schools. Building on the findings of last year's undercover investigation by the General Accounting Office, which found abusive recruitment practices at each of 15 campuses visited, we have uncovered additional evidence that misleading and deceptive recruitment tactics are not the exception, but the norm. Several months ago here on the floor, I spoke about documents uncovered in my investigation. Those documents instruct recruiters in tactics designed to manipulate and emotionally exploit potential students in order to convince them to enroll. And again, I will show today, later in my talk, I will show a chart and I will show you a document that shows how now they're going after military people, military, active duty, and veterans to exploit fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That's the recruiting tactics. Well, we should be concerned that Congress may have unintentionally created an opening for the current generation of veterans and active duty services to be victimized by these abuses simply because of their eligibility for expanded federal aid that we enacted here in the Congress. My committee found evidence that large for-profit schools are aggressively recruiting active duty service members and veterans expressly because of their generous educational benefits packages. It's not just that these military benefits provide a new revenue stream for the companies. The point is it's an especially valuable kind of revenue stream for these companies, more valuable than even going after non-veterans and non-GIs. Now, why is that? Well, listen. Military money helps these for-profit schools to meet a key statutory requirement that no more than 90% of their revenue can come from federal financial programs. Okay, that's in the law. No more than 90% of the income coming into a for-profit school can be from federal financial programs. Well, if a school is getting close to that 90%, guess what they do? They go out after military people. And why is that? Because a military person, active duty or veteran, enrolled in a for-profit school, that does not count for their 90%. It counts on the 10% side. So a school could actually have, and there are some, 92, 94% of all their money coming from federal financial programs, even though the law says you can only get 90%, because military doesn't count. So you can see why, if they're close to 90%, they're going after the military. And that's exactly what's happened. That's exactly what happened. With their eyes on this 90-10 ratio, for-profit schools have moved aggressively to exploit this opportunity. They have created marketing plans and a sales force specifically designed to target and enroll as many veterans, service members, and family members as possible. Schools spend billions on sophisticated marketing campaigns and large sales teams to get those students in the door. Documents obtained by the HELP Committee paint a picture of an industry with a laser-like focus on enrolling military students. For example, I have a 56-page document. Is it this one here? Is it this one? No, it's this document. A 56-page document here from Kaplan Military University. Used to be just called Kaplan University. Now they've added Kaplan Military University. Nice touch. But this lays out their strategy for recruiting military students. Now, if you go through it here, you'll see their objective number one. Now, as I said, this is a laser-like focus going after military people. Objective number one, quote, grow our military enrollments to 9,000 per year by 2011, end quote. At the time, Kaplan is signed up about 2,200 military students each year, so they were aiming at more than a four-fold increase in the military. The document goes on to lay out the marketing and sales plans for achieving this enormous growth. Quote, this is in this document, quote, drive awareness via print advertising in key military publications and targeting key military installations, end quote. To do this, the document suggests that Kaplan planned to spend $30 million over 3 years for new military-specific recruiting staff, advertising, and public relations, just on the military. In a later brainstorming exchange between Kaplan executives, the number one item on the list of initiatives to deal with Kaplan's 90-10 situation, because they were getting close to that 90%, was, quote, accelerate military billings/collection. Go to D.C. and pick up the check if you have to, end quote. Go get that military money so we don't go over that 90% limit. At Education Management Corporation, another for-profit school, the story is similar. Let me quote from a 2010 memorandum prepared by a consultant to the CEO of EMC, Education Management Corporation. The memo begins, quote, thanks for the call outlining the interest of EDMC in learning more about potential areas of funding that could add revenue that would also address the 90-10 issue, end quote. Number one on the list says, quote, probably one of the most important potential short and long-term targets for EDMC are the 800,000-plus military spouses who have been authorized, and this is in italics, for the first time in history, for a one-time entitlement of up to $6,000. An aggressive effort to reach these spouses at the military bases with various career fairs, direct communications, and visibility with the Office of Military Families in Washington would be very important, end quote. A subsequent email message between EDMC's executives recommends that the company should be, quote, leveraging military spouse benefits to the fullest extent possible, end quote, in order to overcome the 90-10 regulation. Executives of for-profit schools are candid about the value of military students in trying to ease investors' concern about regulatory compliance. The CEO of Bridgepoint Education told investors, quote, "Our military enrollment grew from 1% in 2007 to 17% at the end of September 2009. He went on to say, quote, "We believe that when we are able to report our 90-10 for 2009, that it should decrease due to our penetration, in particular, into the military market," end quote. So, we know that these for-profit schools, in their own words, are aggressively pursuing military personnel and their families. Now, how are they enticing them to enroll? A Kaplan training manual entitled Military Learning Modules tells recruiters how to utilize fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the sales process with regards to competitors' offerings, and teaches them how to overcome objections that potential students may raise in signing an enrollment agreement. And this is the one from Kaplan. Fear, uncertainty, doubt. This technique was originally created within the computer hardware industry and uses these emotions to attempt to influence perceptions or beliefs. The technique is especially effective when prospects introduce the, quote, need to examine other online schools. In other words, Kaplan recruiter calls up a veteran or a military person on active duty, wants to get them to enroll, and if that person says, well, okay, I might look, I've seen some ads for Phoenix, and I've seen some ads for IT and others, maybe I'll look those up. They want to use this fear, uncertainty, and doubt when prospects introduce the, quote, need to examine other online schools. Statements such as the following instill fear, uncertainty, and doubt regarding the features of competitors' programs. It's one thing when you're doing this and you're selling, you know, a keyboard or a hard drive or, what was it said, computer hardware. That's one thing. But when you're doing it, to enroll a young man or woman whose family may never have gone to college, they've enlisted in the military out of patriotic sense of duty, they've had no college experience whatsoever, maybe they didn't do all that well in high school, but now they're in the military and they're thinking about what they're going to do, and they get hit with this. That's what I find really objectionable. When these for-profit schools exploit fear, uncertainty, and doubt in our young military people. And I'll have more to say about that and give you some examples of just how onerous this is. When they do this, to get them to sign up in their school, take taxpayers' money, and then go out and borrow some more money, turn it over to the school, only to find out that they don't have any support, nothing to help them. They drop out within a year. They've got debt. They've went through their military benefits, which they can never get again, and the for-profit schools have the money. A military recruiter at Colorado Technical University, another for-profit school, it's owned by the publicly traded Career Education Corporation, told the New York Times, quote, "There is such pressure to simply enroll more vets. We knew that most of them would drop out after the first session. Instead of helping people, too often I felt like we were almost tricking them," end quote. Robert Songer, the coordinator of all education programs for service members at Camp Lejeune, Marine Corps Base in North Carolina, expressed his reservations to the Bloomberg News Service. Quote, "Some of these schools prey on Marines. Day and night they call you. They email you. These servicemen get caught in that. Nobody in their families ever went to college. They don't know about college," end quote. Mr. President, these recruiting tactics are nothing short of disgraceful. When students are enrolled through deception or fear, not only are they being tricked, they're also more likely to be unprepared for the challenges of college. These strong-arm, emotionally abusive tactics are indicative of schools that see students strictly as a means to an end of higher profits. They appear to have little or no interest in providing students the academic help and support they need to succeed. The end result is that service members and veterans and their spouses end up enrolling in high-cost programs, dropping out in staggering numbers, often winding up with a mountain of student debt. And this often happens despite the availability of similar or better quality programs in the public and nonprofit sectors of higher education. Now, the tactics have certainly paid off for the company's bottom line. I released a report last December documenting the absolutely tremendous increase in the amount of money these companies are receiving from military education programs. Building on the already substantial growth in revenues generated from the traditional federal financial aid programs, which went, by the way, from $14 billion in 2005 to $29 billion in 2009. The relentless focus that for-profits have brought to military recruiting has yielded an astonishing growth in the funds they get both from the Department of Defense and from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Again, keep in mind, we're talking about two entities, active duty personnel and veterans. As the new post-9/11 GI Bill was implemented, 18 large for-profit operators pushed their intake of VA dollars from $26 million in 2006 to an astonishing $286 million in 2010. This is what happened. This chart illustrates what happened in VA. Here we are, $26 million in 2006, $25 million in 2007, $27.6 million in 2008. In 2009, when we passed the bill, it kind of goes up to 55. Look what happened in 1 year. From 2009, $55 million to $285.8 million in 1 year. By the way, that's a profit they took in. That's the amount of money they took in. These same companies, now that's the veterans. Now, the same companies increased their collection of Department of Defense benefits by 337%, $40 million in 2006 to $175 million in 2010. Now, again, this is for active duty. And you see the steady increase here all the way up and again up into 2010. From $40 million in 2006 to $175 million in 2010. This didn't just happen. It's happened because the for-profit companies decided they were going to go after military because they were getting close to their 90% threshold. And keep in mind, these dollars don't count for that. And so they could keep under the 90% threshold by getting more military people. Again, let's be clear, these exorbitant amount of federal dollars are not going to small family-owned institutions. They're going to some of the largest Wall Street-owned companies. Out of the $640 million in post-9/11 GI Bill benefits that flowed to for-profit schools in just 2009 and 10, that's $500 million, $640 million, over $500 million in 1 year. $439 million went to the 15 publicly traded companies. This amount is equal to 69% of the military money flowing to for-profit schools and 25% of all post-9/11 GI Bill benefits. Let me repeat that. Let's just say this, 25%, 1/4 of all of the GI Bill benefits post-9/11 went to 15 publicly traded companies. It'd be one thing if the for-profit schools were using this for educational expenses. But unfortunately, the lion's share of that money, taxpayers' dollars, went into profits, marketing, and guess what? Wall Street executive salaries and bonuses. What are we getting? in return for this enormous investment of taxpayers' dollars? Well, we're getting a lot of questions. We're getting a lot of questions. I will go on those right after I yield to the leader.
Through the chair, could I ask my distinguished friend, the chairman of the Help Committee, if I could do a unanimous consent situation here?
Yes.
I would ask that the distinguished chairman's statement not appear interrupted in the record.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that morning business be extended until 7 p.m. tonight. Senators permitted to speak for up to 10 minutes each during that period of time.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent that it be in order to proceed to S. 1038 introduced earlier today.
Without objection.
I move to proceed then, Mr. President, to S. 1038.
The clerk will report.
Motion to proceed to S. 1038, a bill to extend expiring provisions of the USA Patriot Improvement and Reauthorization Act of 2005 and the Intelligence Reform and Terrorism Prevention Act of 2004 until June 1, 2015, and for other purposes.
I have a cloture motion at the desk.
The clerk will report the motion.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, hereby move to bring to a close the debate on the motion to proceed to S. 1038, a bill to extend expiring provisions of the USA Patriot Improvement and Reauthorization Act of 2005, the Intelligence Reform and Terrorism Prevention Act of 2004, and the FISA Amendments Act of 2008, signed by 18 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask that reading of the names be waived.
Without objection.
I ask consent the mandatory quorum under Rule 22 be waived.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent that upon conclusion of morning business on Monday, May 23rd, the Senate resume consideration of the motion to proceed to S. 1038, and that at 5 p.m. the Senate proceed to vote on the motion to invoke cloture on the motion to proceed. Further, that the time for debate on the motion to proceed be equally divided and controlled between the two leaders or the designees.
Without objection.
I appreciate, Mr. President, my friend, the junior senator from Iowa, allowing me to interrupt him.
Senator from Iowa.
I thank the leader. Mr. President, we know that student outcomes for the general population at for-profit schools are pretty dismal. On average, 55% of students who attend these schools drop out within a year. And there's no evidence that military students are faring better. 8 of the 10 top recipients of VA dollars see more than half of their associate degree students they enrolled drop out within a year. 5 of the schools see more than a 60% drop. So this is what our investigation revealed. Here's the 10 schools receiving the most Department of Veterans Affairs funds. You can see ITT, they got the most, $70.9 million, and that's a 1 year. That's a 1 year amount. Those who enrolled for a 4-year degree program, 44% withdrew. Those who signed up for a 2-year program, 53% withdrew. You can look down here to Kaplan. Kaplan got $17.3 million. Look at this. On their bachelor's degree, 68.2% withdrew. 69% of a 2-year students withdrew. First year, in the first year. Now here's what's startling. That's bad enough as it is. But our investigation showed that neither the Department of Defense nor the Department of Veterans Affairs has any method to assess what's happening to these students. They just give them the money. These students get high-pressured tactics from the recruiters. these schools, the money flows out, and neither the Department of Veterans Affairs nor the Department of Defense has any way to assess whether or not they're getting a good education. I might add, neither does the Department of Education, nor does any of the entities that accredit these schools. They have no way of assessing what's happening to these students. So if you want to know why we need a gainful employment rule, to finally find out what's happening to some of these students. And I might just add, Mr. President, that Senator Carper has looked into this also in his subcommittee. He's looked into this. And we've discussed the possibility of looking at something to get the Department of Defense to start taking better care of their active duty personnel and the Department of Veterans Affairs to take better care of the veterans. We need to have better assessment of what's happening to these students and what's happening to the money and how much debt they're accumulating and what's happening to their education. What we're doing is we're basically handing over huge and growing sums of military money to for-profit schools without any ability to assess whether these schools are giving our active duty members or veterans any kind of a quality education that they deserved. The complaints I've gathered in the course of our investigation point to a deeply disturbing willingness on the part of for-profit schools to exploit veterans. I want to repeat that. Our investigation shows clearly that a number of these for-profit schools are out to exploit veterans. I received this letter from a veteran who attended ITT Technical Institute, the biggest receiver of VA funds. Here's what he said. He said, quote, "Unlike other institutions I reached out to, as soon as I expressed interest in ITT Tech, they began to actively and aggressively pursue me. Minutes after I filled out an online form, a recruiter called me. He then called me every day, telling me it was urgent for me to enroll. The letter writer notes that due to the high cost of tuition, he had to take out loans. But he writes, quote, "The expensive tuition did not seem to go toward a quality education," end quote. He concludes with this, quote, "Within 2 months of leaving ITT Tech, they sent me a bill for $2,000 and a transcript that showed clear signs that it was altered in a way to specifically make my positive balance disappear and create a negative balance," end quote. This letter writer ends with these chilling words, quote, "I regret attending ITT Tech. The institution provided at best an absolute minimum education and left me with nearly insurmountable debt," end quote. This is a veteran. Another veteran who attended Bridgepoint Education's Ashford University wrote the following, quote, "I was extremely disappointed, confused, and angry. I felt that I had been misled, deceived, or even outright lied to in an effort to gain my contractual agreement," end quote. He was repeatedly assured by Bridgepoint recruiters that his post-9/11 GI Bill benefits would cover the entire cost of his degree, only to find out after he was enrolled that he would owe close to $11,000. Another student, this one at the University of Phoenix, sent this letter to the Arizona Attorney General after trying to resolve his complaint with the school. Quote, "I have been a police officer for over 20 years. I am also an Iraq war veteran. I believe that the University of Phoenix is using deceptive practices in order to lure students into the school. The enrollment counselors tell students that they should be complete with their course of study in a short period of time, fully knowing exactly how long it's going to take. The enrollment counselors eventually tell the student that it's going to take a lot longer to finish their program, but not until the student has committed all of his financial aid and invested so much money that it would be senseless to leave and waste his invested time and money, end quote. A letter to the Attorney General of Arizona. Mr. President, what are the consequences for a student who enrolls at one of these schools but is not satisfied with their experience? Well, the post-9/11 GI Bill benefit package can be depleted rapidly. If benefits are used up without completing a program or for credits that can't be transferred, the benefits cannot be recovered. In fact, because of the high tuition, many students, as I pointed out, have to apply for additional grants or loans to pay for school. That means that many veterans are pressured into signing up for one of these for-profit schools, told that they have all these benefits, free money, to pay for their tuition. They sign them up, and then all of a sudden they find that that's not quite enough money. Now they have to apply for a loan. And they get a loan. They drop out within a year or so. The schools keep the money, some of it grant money, some of it loan money, and the GI or the military person is left with a debt and absolutely no diploma. Here's a letter addressed to the Ohio for-profit school regulator that reads, and this just tears your heart out. This is from a mother. Quote, normally a 26-year-old man doesn't need his mom advocating for him. But this is anything but a normal situation. I expected my son to be changed by his tour of duty in Iraq, but I could not have been prepared for the reality of those changes. My son struggles on a daily basis with symptoms from post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury. He suffers from bouts of depression, anxiety, headaches, nightmares, vision problems, mental confusion, insomnia, and many other symptoms. You have to pretty much bottom line your conversations with him. He can't mentally process a lot of details. If you continue with your details, he's done with the conversation unless you can return to a quick bottom line. The mother goes on, quote, it is my belief that the ITT representative may have quickly figured this out and taken advantage of the opportunity. I remember when he, my son, called from ITT because I was on my way out to an important occasion. He said the representative told him he needed a cosigner just so he could start school immediately, but not to worry about it because the military was going to pay for everything, even give him money to live on and pay his expenses. He sounded so hopeful, something I hadn't heard from him since before the war. It was really hard for him to admit that he couldn't continue going to school. He said he just couldn't retain the material. It became too stressful for him to continue. My son is a proud young man. He's not looking for pity or charity. He is embarrassed that he believed what he was told by the ITT rep. He could hardly come around to me when he found out that Sallie Mae was calling me for payment of his loan that she had co-signed. Veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder commonly isolate themselves from family and friends. This made it even worse. As a mother and a human being, I am outraged that this kind of predatory lending tactic is used on anyone, but especially on an American soldier who gave everything he had and almost lost his life many times and who continues to suffer. I will pursue this on my son's behalf until someone listens and forgives these loans. Thank you all for your effort. It is very much appreciated, end quote. So, Mr. President, this situation is unacceptable. Unacceptable. Active duty military personnel and veterans using their hard-earned benefits, victims of these kind of high-pressure tactics of the for-profit schools, enticing them to enroll, taking their money, causing them maybe even to go into further debt, and then not giving them any support whatsoever. As I said before, the agencies distributing this money do not investigate and act on the reported abuses by for-profit schools. They just don't. Earlier this month, the GAO released a report concluding that the VA still faces numerous challenges in implementing a program that they wanted to start to begin interventions. Mr. President, many for-profit schools have succeeded in building a highly profitable business structure while failing to provide the student services, learning environment, and career services that will enable their students to graduate and succeed. The federal government must be vigilant to ensure that poor-performing for-profit schools with huge dropout and student default rates are not allowed to continue to receive billions of dollars in federal taxpayer money every year. We owe this to taxpayers, but we also owe this to the men and women who have served and sacrificed for our nation in uniform. And that's why I wanted to take the time on the floor today to point out this new and disturbing finding of our committee, how much these schools are targeted, how they're using the high-pressure tactics to get them to enroll, because they know that if they get the money, it helps them keep below that 90% level where they can only get 90% from the government, but the military money doesn't count. Shameful. It's shameful that these for-profit schools are allowed to get by with this. And they continue it yet today. Continue it. Reaping huge profits, paying their CEOs and their executives enormous amounts of money, hundreds of millions of dollars every year. And yet, it's our men and women in uniform, our GIs, taken in, who weren't provided any help or support, but now are saddled with a lot of debt, or they've used up their GI Bill benefits, and maybe now they want to go to a community college, somewhere to really get a good education, and now they find out they can't get any more GI Bill money. They're done. They gave it all to one of these for-profit schools. Mr. President, I'd like to ask unanimous consent
Mr. President, can I ask the Senator from Iowa
to put the documents referenced that I had referenced in the record.
Without objection.
Senator from Iowa yield for question.
Delighted to yield to my friend from Illinois, who has also been a strong fighter for the rights of our students, and who's also, I would say, over the last several years, focused a lot of attention on these abuses of the for-profit schools.
I thank the Senator from Iowa, and he's led the way. Your committee investigation on this industry is a clarion call to every member of the Senate, both political parties. Are we going to continue to waste taxpayers' money? Are we going to continue to allow these schools to exploit veterans and students across America? You can't turn on the local television here in Washington, D.C., where there are a lot of military families, without running into ITT ads, trying to lure these young veterans into their programs that are virtually worthless, that end up saddling many of them with debt, if not saddling the government with debt before it's all over. And I'd ask the Senator from Iowa, is it not a fact, for the record, that when the new leadership came into the Republican House of Representatives, that in the first few weeks of activity, one of the first things they did was to attempt to stop the Department of Education from regulating this for-profit school industry?
The Senator's right on mark. The House wanted to keep the Department of Education from issuing what we call a gainful employment rule, which basically is a rule saying, look, if you're going to take all this money, then and you're supposed to be educating kids to get a job or a career, what's happening to them? We want to know if they're actually getting jobs. What could be more innocent than that? We just want to know what they're doing. And yet the Republican leadership in the House of Representatives wanted to stop the department from issuing that rule.
And I might ask the Senator from Iowa, at the end of the day, is it not true that while these for-profit schools have about 10% of the students in America, they take in almost 25% of all federal aid to education?
The Senator's absolutely right.
Is it not also true that your committee, well, we requested, I think, together,
Yes.
the GAO do a study
Yes.
of the amount of money that was being spent on behalf of our veterans at for-profit schools? And did we not find that the cost to the federal government was often 2 or 3 times as much for the same education that was being offered at community colleges and public colleges? Isn't it true that the for-profit industry, by all objective measures, is exploiting our GI Bill at the expense of our taxpayers, our government in debt, and these veterans who are unwittingly signing up for these worthless courses?
I say to my friend, yes, we did, and on December the 8th, our committee issued a report, December the 8th of 2010, on partially, it's in the report of what the Senator is saying now, how much more expensive these programs are in these schools compared to what they could get, say, at a community college or a non-profit school in their states. And the Senator's right. It's 3 to 4 times as much. And plus, there's one other thing I'd say to my friend. He knows this, that when these students go to, say, a small not-for-profit school that you'd have in Illinois, or the colleges I have in Iowa, like Simpson or Graceland or Central College, a number of our small private colleges do a great job. They do a wonderful job in helping poor students who need a lot of Pell Grants. Well, what these colleges do, when students come in and they borrowed money and they're using Pell Grants, they get a lot of support from the university. The university is there to help them with their studies, to make sure they get the kind of help and support, because a lot of these students come from families that have never gone to college. They've never had that kind of experience. So they come into college to get that support. What the for-profits do, they'll sign these kids up. Once they get the money, good luck in ever getting any help or support from the for-profit colleges.
I might say to the Senator from Iowa, next time he's in Chicago and is headed out to O'Hare Airport, right before the O'Hare exit, look to your right, and you'll see a tall office building, and up at the top it'll say Westwood College. Now, this has been one of my favorites, because I have met so many so-called students, and I say that despite their best effort to be students, who have been exploited by Westwood College. And I want to just share with the Senator one story to show you that this can go from bad to worse when it comes to veterans and Westwood College. There was a veteran named Carlos who wrote to me. He'd served in the Army in Iraq, came home and wanted to get a college degree. He saw the ad for Westwood College on television, and he went to sign up, and they said, "Don't worry about it, Carlos, because at the end of the day, your GI Bill is going to pay for everything." So Carlos signed up, and he started going out to this Westwood College and was disappointed at how awful the courses were and how the teachers weren't teaching anything. He didn't feel like he was earning anything, he said, learning anything. After a year, Westwood called him in and said, "Carlos, you're on your road to your degree, but we've run into a problem. The GI Bill won't cover all the expenses." Well, if I'm not mistaken, I'll ask the Senator from Iowa, doesn't the GI Bill pay about $17,000 a year?
That's right. That's right, exactly.
So they said to Carlos, "We need for you to take out student loans on top of the GI Bill." He ended up taking out the loans, going $23,000 in debt over and above the GI Bill, and he couldn't finish. He didn't want to go any further in debt. I might say to Carlos, he got off easy. I had a young woman who went to Westwood College for a criminal justice degree. After 5 years of extra effort to get her diploma, she ended up with a worthless diploma that she couldn't turn into a job anywhere at any sheriff's office or any place related to criminal justice. And I might say to the Senator from Iowa, she was $90,000 in debt. $90,000 in debt at the age of 26 with a worthless diploma from Westwood College, this for-profit school. She's living in her parents' basement because she can't get a job that pays anything, and whatever she makes goes to the student loans, and she can't borrow a nickel now to get a real education.
Of course not.
Think about this poor girl.
Yeah.
She was doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And I'll say something to the Senator from Iowa and ask him to comment on this. I think The federal government's at fault here, too. Somewhere along the way, Westwood College ended up qualifying for college student loans and Pell Grants. Well, who said they're qualified? I would challenge that based on these experiences. Are we doing our job as a federal government to make sure that these are truly accredited colleges and universities? I ask you at this point, is there more that we can do to make sure these are real schools teaching real courses that can lead to jobs?
Well, I say to my friend, first of all, Westwood was one of the schools that the GAO had an undercover investigation into that had one of the most deceptive programs of getting students to sign up. And that's all documented on film. Secondly, the accrediting agency that accredits Westwood was out at Westwood about the same time, and yet they found none of the things that the GAO found. And I had a hearing. I had them before our committee, and I asked the accrediting agency, how could it be that on the one hand the GAO finds out all this, and yet you say they're fine and they get accredited? Well, they did admit that there was some laxness or there was some loopholes, there were some things that they weren't paying attention to that they needed to do a better job of accrediting. I say to my friend that what the federal government does is we say that to a school to be able to be eligible for federal financial aid, you could accept Pell Grants and get the guaranteed student loans, you have to be accredited. The federal government doesn't do that accrediting. That's done by private agencies. Now here's another one I say to my friend from Illinois that we need to look into. Get this. The accrediting agencies that accredit, let's say, at Westwood, do you know where they get their funding? From the schools they accredit. Talk about a fox in the chicken coop. So they go out to accredit Westwood, but it's Westwood who's paying them to accredit them. Now, this is something that I think we as a federal government have got to get into. To me, this is a system that has kind of run amok, this whole accrediting system. And I think there needs to be a better system of accrediting schools. I can assure my friend that this is something else that our Committee on Education will be looking at in the future.
I might ask the senator from Iowa, is it not true that when our GAO undercover agents went out to take a look at 15 for-profit colleges along the lines that you've just discussed, they found that all 15 made deceptive or questionable statements to potential applicants, including recruiters at this so-called Westwood College?
Yes.
Investigators found admissions representatives at Westwood misstating the cost of the program, failing to disclose the graduation rates, even suggesting falsification of federal financial aid forms. And as with the experience of the young veteran I described, the GAO report found that recruiters overstated what it would cost to go to public college. When on film, as you said, this is on videotape.
Right.
When asked about the cost of a program by an undercover GAO investigator, this recruiter from Westwood said, well, it depends on the program. Usually with the bachelor's program coming in with no college credits, it could range from $50,000 to $75,000, he said. Most schools, more traditional schools, you're looking at $100,000, $150,000, $200,000. As I might say to the senator from Iowa, isn't it true that to obtain the same degree he was offering at Westwood from a public university in Texas would cost the student $36,000? Isn't that what the GAO came in and said? These people are deliberately misleading these youngsters and new veterans who are trying to make a life for themselves, piling debt on them with a worthless diploma and ripping off the taxpayers. Why don't we have a sense of outrage here in Congress at this going on?
Give me that.
I would say to the senator,
the first one, the first chart.
it strikes me that first and foremost we should protect the young people in America, and we ought to make an equally high, if not higher, priority of protecting our veterans. We created the GI Bill with a great source of pride. I know you're a Navy veteran yourself. Great source of pride that we were standing up for this generation of veterans. Senator Jim Webb helped lead the way on that. We voted for it, feeling good about ourselves and good about keeping our word to veterans. Yeah. And now these same veterans are being ripped off because we're not doing our job in Congress. Right. I asked the senator, when it comes to some of these recruiting practices that are being used by Kaplan University, which owns the Washington Post, What you have disclosed here on the floor is embarrassing, that we allow this to occur to our veterans.
Well, I say now, my friend, it is. It's embarrassing, and it's just shameful. I said earlier, this is from Kaplan's recruiting. They call it their military learning module. And they call it fear, uncertainty, and doubt. As I said earlier, they say, now this is an internal document. This is for their recruiters. This is not something they hand out to the public, okay? We got this through our investigation. They say this technique of fear, uncertainty, doubt was originally created within the computer hardware industry and uses these emotions to attempt to influence perceptions or beliefs, and on and on. As I said earlier, it's one thing for high-pressure tactics to sell you a hard drive or a new computer or something. But when you are exploiting fear, uncertainty, and doubt on a GI who may have post-traumatic stress disorder,
That's right.
who may have served in Iraq, who didn't go to college, young people now they're worrying about their future and what's going to happen to their future, and they come in and put the pressure on them with fear, uncertainty, and doubt to get them to sign a contractual agreement and turn over their GI Bill benefits. It's just disgraceful.
I ask the Senator again, this is Kaplan University, which owns the Washington Post.
Well, I'd say to my friend, I think it's the other way around.
Maybe the other way around.
The Washington Post owns Kaplan University, yes.
I see. Well, I also think for the record that Kaplan University makes more money than the newspaper. But be that as it may, the fact is they are linked economically.
Yes, they are.
And it strikes me that I've always respected this newspaper, and I just wonder how they can rationalize this sort of activity, the exploitation of students and the exploitation of veterans. I'm sure that you have been visited by so many people who have called you and said, Senator Harkin, loved your speech, loved your hearing, got to get in and talk to you because we're the good guys. We're the good school. We're the ones who don't exploit students. And you know what? I found a couple of them that I believe.
There's some that...
There's some that are good.
That's right.
But the rest of them, at this point, it's an embarrassment to me. As a person who couldn't have gone to college without a student loan, and I voted reflexively now in the House and the Senate to give the next generation the same chance, I've got to say, Senator Harkin, the party's over as far as I'm concerned. The next time we have a debate on Pell Grants and college loans, I want this issue front and center. They are ripping off the taxpayers and ripping off the students and ripping off the veterans, and we are fools to ignore it. And when the House Republicans have announced that they want no part of reform, they want to take this power away from the Department of Education, I think we've got to send a different message.
You know, I say to my friend, you know, you're right on target on this. And what's happened, as we've looked at this over the last year and a half now, is even the good actors are being sucked into this vortex because the business model itself is bad. For example, how many times has my friend heard from the for-profit industry, well, the reason we have these high dropout rates, for example, here's Westwood, 57.6% dropped out in the first year. Here's Kaplan, 69% dropped out in the first year for an associate's degree. The reason we do is because, you see, we serve a lot of low-income students. These are low-income people that that we serve, and they have a lot of problems in their lives, and that's why we have such a high dropout rate. What they're not telling you is because of the business model, that's exactly who they go after to recruit. Why do they do that? Because the lowest income person, student, gets the highest Pell Grant and the most guaranteed student loan. So if you're in the for-profit business and you want to make the most money, you don't want to recruit Senator Durbin's son or daughter. You want to recruit somebody whose parents never went to college, who's probably minority, maybe doesn't even speak English all that well, who can get the maximum Pell Grant and the maximum student loan. And once you get it, and they get the money, well, if you stay, fine. If you don't, no big deal.
Well, let's stick on that point for a second. I asked the senator from Iowa, how long does the student have to stay at the school for the school to get the amount, the federal money? If they left and didn't finish, you know, would the school still get paid?
This is something else we've got to look into. Right now, the federal laws are that a student has to be in for at least 60% of a term. If you're in for 60% of a term, then the school can keep the money. Now, I asked my friend from Illinois, what's a term? Well, I ask people that, and they say, well, isn't that a semester? Well, a term is whatever a school says it is. Some of these schools have a term that's 6 weeks long. So you sign up, you turn over your money, you spend 4 weeks there, you fulfilled 60% of the term. If you leave, they keep the money.
And you end up with the student loan.
And you got the student loan. And by the way, we might add,